Welcome to Old South Meeting House, where the Boston Tea Party began. Today, we invite you to listen in, to eavesdrop on two conversations taking place before you. Imagine it is December 15th, 1773. On December 15th, 1773, 3 ships sit in Boston Harbor. Each is carrying a shipment of tea. Earlier this year, Parliament authorized the Tea Act. Under this law, tea would be taxed when it arrived in a colonial port. Special merchants, called tea consignees, were appointed to receive and sell the tea in the colonies. Many colonists are loyalists, loyal to the king. Loyalists believe that the tax is a small fee and that all British citizens should expect to pay taxes. But other colonists are patriots. The patriots protest this tea tax, arguing that colonists should not be taxed if they do not have representation in Parliament. The owners of these tea ships have 20 days to unload their cargo before the tea tax is due at the customs house. The first tea ship, Dartmouth, arrived in Boston in November, about 18 days ago. The deadline is approaching. The tea must be landed and the tax paid, or the patriots must get permission to send the tea back to England. Trouble is brewing. Here we have a shopkeeper. He sells dry goods in a small shop in the center of town. Our shopkeeper is sympathetic to the Patriot cause. When the Patriots cried out for non-importation, he honored their demands and boycotted many British goods from his store, but it has come at a great cost to his business. Our shopkeeper fears that if this tea crisis does not end, he will have to close his shop doors. This afternoon, our Patriot has joined a secret gathering in the Green Dragon Tavern. He looks to the Sons of Liberty for answers. Here, we have a British soldier. He does not hold a high rank. He is one of over 4,000 soldiers that arrived in Boston in 1768 to patrol the streets, keeping peace and protecting British officials from harm. But when the soldiers arrived, tension in Boston only got worse. Colonists resented having so many troops in town, nearly 1 soldier for every 5 colonists. On March 5th, 1770, an altercation in front of the State House turned deadly. Shots were fired and 5 men died. When the colonists protested this so-called Boston Massacre, this soldier and his regiment were forced to move to Castle William in Boston Harbor. Here he sits, watching and waiting.
The deadline approaches. I tire of these meetings, of this violence. When will our town return to order? Yesterday's meeting had the highest attendance yet. I could hardly make my way through the front door of Old South Meeting House. I slipped into the widow's pew next to a silversmith's apprentice who worked almost 20 miles from the town of Boston. Unable to vote himself, the young lad had never attended a meeting like this before. He, like many of the lower sort, hoped that supporting the Patriots would get him in good favor with his master. Now, yesterday's meeting of the body of the people sent the Dartmouth's owner, Francis Roach, to the customs house to get clearance to send his ship back to England without unloading the tea. Roach is very worried that this tea crisis will ruin him. He and the other ship owners lose money each and every day that these ships sit idle in the harbor. The tea, he's been unsuccessful in getting the tea agents to pay for his freight bill, and they will not release him from responsibility for the tea. And now, my fellow patriots ask him to break the law and risk losing his shipping license forever.
Another cold night in this dismal fort. It is quiet tonight, but I know that quiet will not last. The deadline approaches for the tea in the harbor across the way. The colonists will not pay. You should hear the threats made by the so-called Sons of Liberty, the North End Caucus, and other secret societies. They post their broadsides onto doors and to trees, demanding that the tea merchants meet them under their foolish liberty elm. They contribute notices to newspapers under false names. These troublemakers have said that if any attempt is made to land the tea, it will meet with an accident. They threaten these tea merchants for doing what is their lawful right. Yet they portray the wealthy smuggler Hancock as a martyr. The mouthpiece, Samuel Adams, has said to the mobs that they must not resort to violence. But that has not stopped the mobs from burning effigies, breaking windows, and even ransacking homes. Should these loyal merchants, who are merely doing what is their lawful right, bow down to petty laborers, apprentices younger than I, and dirty sea dogs? I say, get me and my mates back on the mainland, and these mobs will have met their match.
Now, how can we merchants in the colonies succeed without British trade routes bringing us British wares? Many businesses in this town have suffered during this tea crisis. The Sons of Liberty and other political organizations press us to neither buy nor sell British wares, but we in this colony have a taste for tea, fine wares, exotic spices. This policy of non-importation has made very few legal items available. Most merchants and shop owners are selling smuggled goods, or they're trying to sell British wares that were in storage before the crisis began. I tell you, I once supported King and Parliament, but their laws are now interfering with my livelihood. What might happen if Britain continues to control our trade and commerce? Will other merchandise in my store be taxed? Or will Britain decide again that only the friends of the king, his loyal merchants, can sell wares here in the colonies? I could lose my entire business.
Two weeks ago, 4 of the tea agents arrived at the fort with all of their possessions. They sought refuge here, surrounded by soldiers and protected by cannon from the colonists who persecute them with the tarring and feathering. The American torture, we call it. Then a handbill circulated about town, warning the customs officer not to allow the tea to be landed, for if they did, they would be considered wretches, unworthy to live. Well, our barracks became much more crowded after that notice was posted. So now, the customs commissioners and their families call these stone walls their home.
In our meetings of the body of the people, here at Old South Meeting House, we have made every effort to resolve this crisis. John Singleton Copley, the artist, has offered to go to the fort and speak with the tea agents. Copley, you see, has married into the Clark family. And so now, this artist, who has painted some of the likenesses of some of our most vocal patriots, now has a father-in-law and two brothers-in-law who are loyalist agents selling this accursed tea. We waited for a reply, fully expecting that the tea agents would not return to the town. Indeed, they would not speak to our faces, but they sent Copley back with a message instead. They would not, the tea agents, would not send the tea back themselves, but they offered to store the tea. And should we decide to take other action, they would not obstruct our plans. Mr. Adams seemed pleased. The tea agency said would soon yield to the will of the people. But Mr. Adams urged us to keep an eye on the consignees. If they were seen to be conferring with the governor, we would know that a great conspiracy was afoot. But now, days later, the agents remain at the fort, and our meetings here have gotten us no further.
Here we are, Britain, a great nation, afraid of a shipment of leaves. Britain has HMS Captain with her 64 guns, 2 frigates, and other smaller vessels sitting in the harbor while we worry over 3 merchant ships and a few hundred crates of tea. That vile drink. The Sons of Liberty have appointed their own men to watch the ships. A maker of rum by the name of Cheever leads the watch. If provoked, the watch is to ring out the bells and warn the colonists of an attack. But the customs tides waiters are on board those ships as well, and they will not allow the tea to be landed without payment. Rumor has it that the colonists have taken to arming themselves. No shop in town has a pistol for sale. Let these colonists sleep with pistols under their pillows. We soldiers know how to use our weapons.
Tonight, I received my orders from the Sons of Liberty. Tomorrow, thousands will gather here at Old South Meeting House to hear whether the governor will allow Roach's ship back to England without paying the tax. I am to meet above the offices of the Boston Gazette and meet with the printer, Benjamin Eads, and his son, Peter. I've been told to bring my heaviest cloak to cover my head and lampblack to smear on my face. A carpenter will provide us with tools. We will arrive early, and we will fill our bellies with drink, and perhaps we will gain some strength from that punch, for we have heavy work ahead of us. I am told to aboard the Eleanor and to assist in hoisting the crates from the hold. I have instructed my son to stay behind. I think it is best that he not be present when we deal once and for all with this problem of the tea.
Today, our officers have ordered us to be ready to take up arms. The naval captains have returned to their ships with their officers. Admiral Montague has ordered his own men to bring lanterns aboard his ship. The sloops are armed, and I have heard that Admiral Montague has said that he will fire upon the town if he receives word of trouble from the magistrates The ship owners or the customs officers. It is strangely quiet tonight. Perhaps a tempest approaches.
The next day, December 16th, 1773, thousands of colonists gathered at Old South Meeting House for one last meeting to decide the fate of the tea sitting in the harbor. Over 5,000 people, more than a third of Boston's population, crowded inside here. Unable to secure a pass from Governor Hutchinson to return his ship back to England, ship owner Francis Roach returned to the meeting house to deliver the bad news. With the governor's refusal, the only legal way the Patriots had to keep the ship from unloading had failed. Patriot Samuel Adams declared, "This meeting can do nothing more to save the country." This was a prearranged signal to the Sons of Liberty to put a surprising plan into action. Cries of, "Hurrah for Griffin's Wharf" and "Boston Harbor, a teapot tonight," were heard. Some members of the Sons of Liberty left the hall, met with others at the doors of the meeting house, and made their way down to the harbor. Joined en route by others who had been getting ready in taverns and homes along the way, these participants threw on rudimentary disguises, faces blacked with lamp soot and bodies draped with heavy coats. They dumped 340 chests of tea into the Boston Harbor in the event now known as the Boston Tea Party. In the end, the British warships and troops remained still. Because they had not received orders from the council or the governor to take action, they could not stop the destruction of the tea. Some officers at Castle William said they heard what was happening at Griffin's Wharf, but without instruction from their superiors, they were helpless to act. Admiral Montague reportedly walked the docks the next morning to see the devastation, to witness the loss of property. He said, "Who will pay the fiddler now? The devil is in this people," he said, "for they pay no more respect to an act of Parliament which can make England tremble than to an old newspaper." The day after the Boston Tea Party, John Adams wrote in his journal, "This destruction of the tea is so bold, so daring, so intrepid, and so inflexible, and it must have so important consequences and so lasting, that I can't but consider it an epic in history." And so it was. The Boston Tea Party was the turning point in the colonists' resistance to British rule. Today, it remains a compelling image of protest for people all over the world. Thank you all for coming, and let's have a round of applause for our performers.
Oh, friend, can you not hear and answer me? Break down this barrier between us. Grasp my hand. Speak. Perhaps I deify a mere shadow, a specter of myself. And so, farewell, Monsieur du Miroir.